Mel Brooks. A name that has made millions laugh across generations. A man whose creativity shaped theater, television, and film in ways few could ever imagine. And yet, beneath the booming voice, beneath the infectious energy, there is a story that cannot be fully captured in applause or accolades. Time is cruel. It erodes everything it touches. Friends, partners, collaborators, moments of brilliance, all eventually slip through the fingers. And for someone who has lived nearly a century, the weight of what remains, and what has been lost, can be staggering. This video is not about his fame, his success, or the legends he created. It is about the moments between the laughter. The silences behind the curtain. The echoes of those who are gone, and the quiet truths that even the funniest man alive cannot escape. As you watch, you may laugh, you may marvel at his genius, but somewhere along the way, you will feel the subtle ache of a life lived fully, and the heartbreak of time's inevitable toll. And when the story ends, the laughter will linger, but so too will the sadness that makes it all the more human. Mel Brooks was born on June 28, 1926. He entered a world already stained with hardship. His father, Max Kaminsky, died when Mel was just 2 years old. A loss that left an emptiness he would later fill with humor, characters, and stories that could make even the heaviest hearts lift for a moment. Growing up during the Great Depression was less a childhood and more a test of endurance. The Kaminsky home was filled with love but never filled with enough money. Mel once said the family survived on hope and herring. In the summer, the Brooklyn streets became his playground. Cracked sidewalks, tenement stoops, street games, and the constant noise of a crowded neighborhood shaped his earliest memories. But even then, he noticed something. When he made people laugh, they stopped worrying for a moment. Their shoulders relaxed. Their eyes brightened. It was a kind of magic, he thought, and he wanted to master it. In school, Mel was the small, wiry kid, often sick, often overlooked, but he possessed a spark teachers noticed immediately. He didn't want to be the toughest or the fastest. He wanted to be the funniest. Humor was the armor he forged for himself. In an environment where survival was the daily task, laughter became his contribution to the world around him. But behind the jokes was a boy deeply shaped by loss. His father's absence haunted him, not with bitterness, but with a strange, motivating ache. Mel wondered what kind of man his father would have been. He wondered if Max Kaminsky would have liked the jokes he told, the characters he invented, the impressions he performed in front of his mother and brothers. Every laugh he ever earned carried the shadow of the man he never got to know. As Mel grew older, his comedic instincts sharpened. He studied the way people talked, walked, moved, exaggerated themselves. He absorbed every bit of personality around him. The grocer shouting prices from behind his stall, the musicians in the park, the tough guys leaning against brick walls with stories wilder than truth. His world was a constant parade of characters, and he stored them all in his memory, building the foundation for the worlds he would one day create. But life changed sharply when the realities of the world intruded. At the age of 17, Mel enlisted in the United States Army during World War II. Suddenly, the bright, loud streets of Brooklyn were replaced with the sobering quiet of training camps and the unimaginable weight of war in Europe. It was here, far from home, that Mel understood the deepest purpose of humor, not to hide pain, but to survive it. He later said he fought 2 wars at once, one with the army, and another against despair. Even in those dark places, he used jokes to lift spirits, to give scared young men a moment of relief, to remind them of home and humanity. This ability, to raise others when the world felt unbearable, would define his entire career. When Mel finally returned home, he carried with him a hardened resilience, a sharpened sense of empathy, and an unshakable belief that laughter was not frivolous, it was essential. He had seen firsthand that joy could coexist with fear, sadness, and uncertainty. And now, with a clearer understanding of life's fragility, he was ready to begin the journey that would change comedy forever. From a small Brooklyn apartment to a world on the brink of collapse, Mel Brooks emerged not simply as a survivor, but as an artist forged in tragedy and tempered by laughter. Chapter by chapter, the world would soon discover what he was capable of. But here, at the beginning, he was just a boy who wanted to make people smile, because he understood how much that mattered. When Mel Brooks returned home from the war, he was no longer the boy from Brooklyn who cracked jokes on stoops and street corners. He was sharper, wiser, and driven by the certainty that life was too fragile to be lived without purpose. And for Mel, that purpose had always been laughter. But the world he returned to was shifting quickly. Radio was beginning to share its stage with a new invention, television. Entertainment was changing, and Mel, without knowing it yet, was standing at the edge of a revolution that needed his voice. In the late 1940s, Mel took his first jobs wherever he could find them. He worked as a drummer, a stand-up comedian, a stagehand, anything that allowed him to stay close to comedy. But his first true break came when he teamed up with Sid Caesar, a rising star in television comedy who immediately recognized Mel's talent. Sid wasn't looking for a polite, predictable writer. He wanted someone fearless, someone who could flip the world upside down with a single idea. Mel Brooks fit that mold perfectly. Mel began writing for the Admiral Broadway Review, and then for the legendary Your Show of Shows, one of the most influential comedy programs in television history. The writing room was a battleground of genius. Beside Mel sat some of the greatest comedic minds of the century: Carl Reiner, Neil Simon, Danny Simon, and Larry Gelbart. Any joke, any sketch, any idea had to fight its way through a room of giants. And Mel thrived in it. His creativity was electric. He didn't just pitch jokes, he erupted with them. Mel would leap onto tables, act out scenes, mimic voices, and transform a simple premise into a full-scale comedic explosion. Writers recalled that when Mel entered the room, it felt as though every wall got a little brighter. Carl Reiner would later say, "Mel didn't write comedy. He lived it." But beneath that vibrant energy was the same gritty determination he'd carried from Brooklyn and Europe. Mel knew what sadness looked like. He knew what fear felt like. And he understood that the best jokes didn't just make people laugh, they made them forget for a moment the weight of their lives. Every punchline was an act of healing. His partnership with Sid Caesar grew into one of the most powerful comedic duos of the era. Mel became a core part of the writing team, contributing to sketches that defined early television. But his true breakthrough, the moment he became more than just a clever writer, arrived through a spontaneous improvisation that would become legendary. One day, during a break, Carl Reiner casually approached Mel, adopting the role of an interviewer. Without hesitation, Mel transformed into a 2,000-year-old man. The improvisation was wild, chaotic, and brilliant. Carl asked questions about ancient history, Moses, marriage, bats, fire, and Mel, as the ancient man, answered everything with a perfect blend of absurdity and insight. What began as a private joke between friends became a cultural phenomenon. The 2,000-year-old man. It wasn't a simple comedy sketch. It was character comedy reinvented, unscripted, fearless, unpredictable. Mel could turn a millennia-old memory into a punchline about human nature in seconds. And audiences loved it. Soon, the routines were performed on radio, recorded on albums, and adored across America. Mel Brooks had gone from a background writer to a comedy voice audiences could recognize instantly. Yet even in success, Mel never lost the humility shaped in his youth. He still worked tirelessly, still treated every joke as though it needed to earn its place. Despite his growing fame, he never believed he had made it. He always felt like the kid from Brooklyn trying to keep everyone laughing. Television opened doors. The sketch work sharpened him. The 2,000-year-old man made him famous. But Mel Brooks wasn't satisfied. The ideas inside him were too big, too loud, too wild for the confines of a television studio. He saw worlds in his mind, worlds of satire, parody, chaos, and brilliance. And soon, he would step into a new arena where all those ideas could finally come to life. What came next wasn't just a career shift. It was the birth of a film legend. By the early 1960s, Mel Brooks had conquered television. His sketches were quoted everywhere, his characters had become cultural staples, and his comedic instincts were sharper than ever. But Mel felt something stirring, a force pulling him beyond the limits of live broadcast, beyond the strict timing of weekly shows. He wanted to build entire worlds, not just scenes, to create experiences rather than segments, to tell stories that were bigger, bolder, and unmistakably his. Hollywood, though, didn't quite know what to do with him. Mel's humor was too outrageous, too fearless, too unpredictable for the cautious film studios of the time. He wasn't content to play it safe. He wanted satire that pushed boundaries. He wanted to expose hypocrisy through comedy so ridiculous, it forced people to question the world around them. Studios were hesitant, but Mel Brooks had never been a man who waited for permission. And so he began writing the producers. The idea was explosive. A pair of scheming Broadway partners attempt to create the biggest flop in history by producing a musical so offensively absurd that it can't possibly succeed, Springtime for Hitler. No one had ever dared to suggest such a premise, let alone turn it into a film. But Mel wasn't trying to shock, he was trying to defeat hate through laughter, to turn the darkest chapter of the 20th century into something so foolish, so ridiculous, that its power evaporated. Executives balked. Some were offended. Others were terrified. But a few saw what Mel saw: genius. In 1967, The Producers was released, and while some critics didn't know how to react, others hailed it as revolutionary. Mel Brooks had done the unthinkable. He'd broken open the boundaries of film comedy. He had risked everything on a concept that only he could dare attempt. And for it, he won the Academy Award for Best Original Screenplay. It was a victory that changed the trajectory of his career forever. Mel Brooks was no longer the wild television writer or the improvisational genius of radio records. He was a filmmaker, an innovator with a voice unlike anyone else. His success gave him freedom. Freedom to experiment, to push, to break rules no one else dared challenge. And he wasn't finished. If the producers cracked open the door for Mel Brooks in Hollywood, the next decade would see him kick it off its hinges entirely. The 1970s became his golden era, a period of creative explosion during which he created some of the most iconic comedies in cinematic history. This wasn't just success. This was cinematic dominance. In 1970, he released The 12 Chairs, a film filled with charm, wit, and heart, a gentler comedy that showed another side of his storytelling. But it was only a warm-up. The next few years would define his legacy forever. 1974, the year Mel Brooks took over the world. In an unprecedented creative outburst, Mel released not one but two masterpieces in the same year, Blazing Saddles and Young Frankenstein. Blazing Saddles, co-written with Richard Pryor, was a fearless satire that tore apart racism, hypocrisy, and the mythology of the American West. It was loud, bold, and unapologetically confrontational. Audiences laughed until they cried. Critics were stunned. Hollywood had never seen a film like it, and perhaps never will again. Only months later came Young Frankenstein, a loving, meticulous parody of the classic Universal monster films. It was shot in black and white, using vintage lenses and original lab equipment from the 1930s. It wasn't just funny, it was beautiful. A masterpiece disguised as a spoof. Gene Wilder, Marty Feldman, Terry Garr, Madeline Kahn, every performance sparkled. And Mel Brooks proved he wasn't just a comedy rebel, he was a craftsman. Both films became instant classics. The industry couldn't ignore it. Mel Brooks was redefining what comedy could be. Then came the icons. Silent Movie, 1976, a near-silent film in an age dominated by sound. Mel took the oldest format in cinema and revived it with modern absurdity. High Anxiety, 1977, a pitch-perfect Hitchcock parody written with such precision that even Alfred Hitchcock praised it privately. History of the World, Part 1, 1981. An audacious, era-hopping satire that blended history, music, irreverence, and the unmistakable Brooks style. Each film was different. Each film showed a new facet of his genius. And each one carved deeper into the bedrock of American comedy. Mel Brooks was no longer simply successful. He was shaping culture itself. His films influenced generations of creators. His fearlessness inspired comedians to take risks. His style became a blueprint for how satire could be smart, chaotic, outrageous, and meaningful all at once. During this golden era, Mel wasn't just directing movies. He was building a legacy that would outlive everyone who saw it. And though he didn't yet know it, the laughter he created during these years would become even more precious in the decades ahead, as life's weight grew heavier, and time slowly began to dim the lights of his once boundless world. By the time the 1980s arrived, Mel Brooks had already proven himself as a filmmaker who could break every rule and still make audiences roar with laughter. But Mel was never meant to stay inside a single lane. Creativity overflowed in him. It seeped into every corner of his life. Film had been his rocket, but theater was where his heart found a second home. Mel had always loved Broadway. As a young man, he used to stand outside theaters with a deep admiration for the stage's magic. The lights, the voices, the immediacy of live performance. As his film career matured, he knew he wanted to return to that world, not just as a viewer, but as a creator. Still, Mel never rushed. He waited for the right story, the right spark, the right way to bring his audacity into the world of theater. That spark ignited in the late 1990s and early 2000s, when he revisited one of his oldest masterpieces, The Producers. What began as a bold 1967 film would soon become one of the greatest Broadway properties ever created. The Producers, the Broadway phenomenon. When The Producers opened as a stage musical in 2001, Broadway didn't just embrace it, it exploded. Starring Nathan Lane and Matthew Broderick, the show brought Mel's humor to a new generation. Songs like Springtime for Hitler and I Wanna Be a Producer filled theaters with chaotic joy. Critics praised it as one of the most brilliant stage comedies ever written. But the reaction that truly cemented its place in history came at the Tony Awards. The Producers won 12 Tonys, the most of any show in Broadway history. No one had done that before. No one has done it since. Mel Brooks, the boy from Brooklyn who once performed jokes on worn-out apartment stoops, had conquered Broadway with a musical of impossible success. His storytelling now spanned radio, television, film, and the stage. And each medium gave him a new canvas on which to paint his chaotic genius. Beyond Broadway, producing, mentoring, expanding the empire, Mel didn't stop there. He co-created the musical adaptation of Young Frankenstein, produced numerous films through his company, Brooks Films, and lent his instincts to stories that weren't necessarily comedic. Brooks Films produced impactful dramas like The Elephant Man, 1980. A film so sensitive, so beautifully crafted, that many people didn't even realize Mel Brooks was behind it. He hid his name deliberately to ensure audiences took the movie seriously. It was one of the few times he chose to stay out of the spotlight, letting the work speak entirely on its own. This era of his life was defined not by reinvention, but by expansion. Mel Brooks had become more than a filmmaker, more than a comedian. He had become a guardian of creativity, a multi-medium storyteller who refused to let any boundary hold him still. As Mel Brooks moved into the later decades of his life, something remarkable happened. While many artists fade quietly, their voices dimming with age, Mel seemed to burn brighter, not in volume or intensity, but in presence. His work slowed, of course. Time has its demands. But his spirit remained as sharp as ever. By his late 70s, 80s, and even into his 90s, Mel Brooks was still a force. Still writing, still performing, still showing up in interviews with jokes so quick and sharp they stunned even the youngest comedians. How could a man nearly a century old move with that kind of mental agility? How could he still carry the lightness of humor despite all he had lived through? The losses that shaped him. Mel's later years were marked by profound personal losses, none greater than the passing of his wife, Anne Bancroft, in 2005. And had been his partner, his anchor, his equal in artistry and soul. Their marriage was one of Hollywood's greatest love stories, honest, quiet, respectful, full of admiration. Her absence changed Mel forever. The man who had built a life around laughter suddenly faced a silence he could not joke his way out of. Friends said he became softer, more reflective. He worked less, but he cared more deeply. He found comfort in his children and grandchildren, in memories, in small joys. Still, even grief could not silence him. In his 80s and 90s, Mel adapted to a world that changed faster than anyone could keep up with. He embraced social media, modern talk shows, animated voice roles, and streaming platforms. He made appearances in documentaries, lent his voice to characters in films like Hotel Transylvania, and delivered interviews that went viral simply because people couldn't believe a 90-year-old could be that funny, that sharp, that alive. He recorded audiobooks, performed live shows, and reunited with Carl Reiner almost every night to watch movies, eat dinner, and talk about life. Their friendship, stretching back decades, remained a pillar in Mel's world until Carl's death in 2020. Losing Carl left Mel devastated. For the second time, Mel lost someone who felt irreplaceable. And yet, he kept going. By the time Mel Brooks reached his late 90s, the tragedy wasn't a single event. It was time itself. To live as long as Mel Brooks has lived is both a blessing and a sorrow. Nearly everyone he once worked with, laughed with, loved, or shaped creatively is gone. The world he built his career in no longer exists. The friends who shared his youth, his struggles, his triumphs, they live now only in memory. And still, Mel stands at 99, with the strength of a man who has carried both laughter and loss through almost an entire century. His tragedy is not scandal or failure. It is simply the quiet, breathtaking loneliness of outliving almost everything you once held dear. Yet even in that loneliness, Mel Brooks remains an emblem of resilience. A reminder that humor can be armor, legacy can be shelter, and a single person's joy can outlive the decades themselves. Behind the loud laughter, the explosive punchlines, and the audacious parodies, there exists a quieter, deeply human story. The story of Mel Brooks not as a legend, but as a man. For all his genius, his triumphs, and his outsized personality, Mel Brooks has faced the same fragility, love, and grief that every human confronts. His personal life, often overshadowed by his public persona, is a tapestry woven with devotion, heartbreak, resilience, and a steadfast belief in the power of connection. Mel Brooks met Anne Bancroft in the early 1960s. She was already an established actress, radiant, intelligent, and fiercely talented. For Mel, who had spent much of his life surrounded by fleeting fame, and was a revelation. She understood him, not just as a comedian or filmmaker, but as a human being with insecurities, hopes, and scars. Their courtship was unconventional, grounded less in glitter and more in mutual respect, shared laughter, and the kind of quiet intimacy that often escapes the public eye. They married in 1964 and remained together until Anne's death in 2005, 41 years of marriage in a world where such longevity is rare. Colleagues and friends often remarked that Anne was both Mel's anchor and mirror. Where he was brash, she was reflective. Where he was chaotic, she offered calm. Where he challenged the world with laughter, She reminded him of the quiet joys of life: family, friendship, and love. Mel has often said that and was his greatest collaborator, not in scripts or jokes, but in life itself. She inspired him to reach higher, to dig deeper, and to confront pain with courage. Her death left a silence that reverberated through every corner of his world. It was a loss that no joke could patch and no film could disguise. Amidst the whirlwind of films and Broadway productions, Mel raised a son, Max Brooks, who would grow into a celebrated writer in his own right. Through him, Mel learned the quiet satisfaction of watching a child grow into adulthood, the pride of seeing values passed on, and the subtle challenge of letting go while remaining a guiding presence. Yet family also brought Mel grief. He witnessed the passage of time through the faces of his loved ones. Children growing older, friends passing, collaborators vanishing. Each loss, each empty chair at the table, added weight to the very joy he had spent a lifetime spreading. But even in the face of such heartbreak, Mel maintained a sense of humor, using laughter as a balm for both himself and those around him. If his marriage was the anchor, friendship was the wind in his sails. Carl Reiner, his longtime collaborator and confidant, was more than a creative partner. He was a brother in every sense. Their friendship endured decades, surviving professional rivalries, personal changes, and the relentless march of time. The loss of Carl in 2020 was a devastating blow, a reminder that even the strongest bonds are not immune to mortality. Other relationships, professional and personal, provided Mel with lessons in humility, collaboration, and the complexity of human nature. He cherished mentors, valued colleagues, and mourned the passing of friends whose laughter once filled a room. These experiences, often quiet and hidden, shaped the man behind the public persona, a man whose brilliance was inseparable from his humanity. Mel Brooks' personal life is also a story of reckoning with mortality. By the time he reached his late 90s, he had lived through almost a century of world history: war, social upheaval, technological revolutions, and the relentless evolution of culture. He had seen friends die, partners pass, and eras vanish. The laughter that once came so easily now carried the weight of memory, reflection, and occasional melancholy. Yet even in the face of mortality, Mel did not shrink. He embraced life with the same audacity that defined his career, attending events, recording interviews, mentoring younger comedians, and occasionally performing. His resilience is a testament to the human capacity for joy, even in the twilight of life. What sets Mel Brooks apart is that he recognized early the dual power of humor, to create joy and to shield against sorrow. In his personal life, laughter was a tool for connection, a bridge over grief, and a reminder of life's fleeting beauty. Every joke told, every story shared, and every smile elicited was, in its own way, an act of survival. He turned personal pain into collective joy, teaching those around him, family, friends, and audiences, that humor is a lifeline in the face of life's inevitable trials. Mel Brooks is more than a filmmaker, playwright, or comedian. He is a force of cultural transformation, a visionary whose work reshaped comedy and left an indelible imprint on the arts. His legacy is not confined to the accolades he received or the films he made. It is alive in the countless creators he inspired, the genres he redefined, and the laughter that continues to echo long after his scenes have ended. Before Mel Brooks, comedy often played it safe. There were boundaries, social, political, and cinematic, that few dared cross. Brooks obliterated those boundaries. He took risks other creators avoided, blending satire with farce, parody with homage, absurdity with intellect. His films were loud, irreverent, and often controversial, yet beneath every outrageous joke lay precision, thought, and insight. Blazing Saddles confronted racism with audacious satire. Young Frankenstein celebrated horror while parodying its tropes with loving precision. The producers dared to turn one of history's darkest subjects into a tool for laughter, without ever losing moral awareness. Mel's genius lay in his ability to make audiences think while they laughed, to confront discomfort with humor, and to show that comedy could be profound as well as entertaining. The impact of Mel Brooks is immeasurable. Countless comedians, writers, filmmakers, and performers cite him as a direct inspiration. Comedians like Eddie Murphy, Amy Poehler, and Seth MacFarlane credit Brooks' fearlessness and timing as formative in their understanding of comedy. Filmmakers including the Coen brothers and Taika Waititi have noted his ability to combine homage with innovation as a blueprint for modern satire. Stage creators recognize him as the pioneer who brought film comedy to Broadway, blending cinematic absurdity with live theatrical energy. Even today, young performers discover his work on streaming platforms, laugh at the same audacious jokes, and marvel at how one man could reshape humor across media. Mel Brooks didn't just entertain, he challenged, provoked, and celebrated humanity. His films introduced audiences to worlds where absurdity highlighted truth, where parody became reflection, and where laughter became a tool to endure life's hardships. For nearly a century, he has shown that comedy is not trivial, it is essential. His work also created conversations about social issues, from racism and anti-Semitism to gender norms, long before such discussions were mainstream. By embedding commentary and humor, he made challenging topics accessible, palatable, and unforgettable. Perhaps most importantly, Mel Brooks' influence is not measured solely by awards or box office numbers. It is measured in moments. A teenager in 2025 discovering the 2,000-year-old man and laughing uncontrollably, a Broadway audience cheering at the producers, a filmmaker finding courage to take risks because Brooks showed that audacity could succeed. These moments, ephemeral yet powerful, are the living proof of his cultural immortality. As Mel Brooks approaches the remarkable milestone of 99 years, his legacy is both an achievement and a promise that one individual, armed with imagination, courage, and laughter, can transform the world. And while time inevitably erodes every moment, every friend, and every performance, the echoes of his work remain, timeless, unyielding, and infinitely alive. As Mel Brooks approaches the extraordinary age of 99, the story of his life is no longer just a tale of laughter, audacity, or innovation. It is a story about time itself, relentless, patient, and unyielding. Every joke he told, every scene he directed, every laugh he inspired has existed against the backdrop of mortality, history, and loss. And it is in this context that his life takes on its most poignant dimension. Memory, for Mel Brooks, has always been a double-edged sword. On one hand, it is the treasury of his brilliance. The sketches he wrote in smoky television rooms, the improvisations that became cultural touchstones, the sets, costumes, and songs that defined generations. On the other hand, memory is the silent witness to absence. The friends who have passed, the collaborators who are no longer at his side, the loved ones whose voices now echo only in recollection. Each of his films, musicals, and performances is a monument not just to comedy, but to endurance. They are testaments to the idea that even as the world changes, even as friends and loved ones vanish, art preserves the essence of who we were. But Brooks also knows, perhaps more acutely than most, that memory is fragile. It can fade, be misremembered, or even be forgotten. And that fragility adds a subtle sorrow to the triumphs he has achieved. Laughter, for Brooks, has always been more than entertainment. It has been survival, connection, and defiance against life's cruelties. Yet laughter is fleeting. A joke lands, a scene elicits applause, a performance draws tears of joy, and then it passes. Time moves on. The audience leaves. The echoes fade. Even the loudest bursts of laughter cannot stop the quiet march of years. Perhaps this is why Mel's later years feel bittersweet. For all the joy he has given to the world, he understands that each generation discovers his work anew, and eventually, even the most devoted audiences will move on. The laughter endures in memory, but the moment itself is irretrievable. Despite this awareness, Brooks' legacy is extraordinary. Not because he achieved fame or wealth, but because he transformed the way we understand comedy. He proved that satire could be fearless, that absurdity could be profound, and that humor could confront darkness without surrendering to it. His influence resonates in every contemporary comedian who challenges convention, every filmmaker who mixes homage with parody, and every performer who dares to laugh at life's cruelty. And yet, the fragility of legacy is unavoidable. Time erodes, tastes shift, cultural context changes. Even the greatest works are subject to reinterpretation, fading relevance, or loss. Mel Brooks' life reminds us that while art can endure, it cannot entirely resist the passage of time. A truth that makes his accomplishments both heroic and heartbreakingly mortal. As the curtain slowly descends on nearly a century of life, the story of Mel Brooks is not one of tragedy in the conventional sense. It is subtler. It is the quiet sorrow of a man who has seen everything he loved pass away, who has witnessed eras vanish, who has watched peers and loved ones disappear. It is the realization that even the brightest stars eventually grow dim in the night sky, and that the echoes of laughter are both powerful and ephemeral. Yet even in this quiet melancholy, there is triumph. Mel Brooks has not only endured, he has created worlds, shaped generations, and taught humanity that laughter is worth the effort. Every smile, every joke, every performance is a victory over impermanence, a declaration that joy, even fleeting, is meaningful. The final scene of his story is not silence. It is laughter. Quiet at times, thunderous at others, but always echoing. A reminder that while time is relentless, memory is resilient, and humor is immortal. The heartbreak in Mel Brooks' story is not in what he lost. It is in what we, the audience, cannot hold forever. The laughter, the joy, the genius. We witness it, cherish it, and then inevitably let it slip through our fingers. Time claims all things, even legends. And yet, in that fragile beauty, there is also hope. Hope that every laugh we remember carries the essence of a man who lived fully, loved deeply, and laughed fearlessly. Mel Brooks at 99 is not merely a living legend. He is a testament to humanity's enduring capacity for joy, even when faced with the inexorable passage of time. And in that, his story is heartbreakingly beautiful. If you felt the weight of Mel Brooks' incredible journey, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more deep dives into the lives of legends. Hit the bell icon so you never miss a story that moves you, inspires you, and sometimes breaks your heart. Because every legend has a story, and we're here to tell it.